This video is a critique which is considered fair use under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. I do not own any of these clips. This is simply fan-made for entertainment purposes only. South Park is owned by Matt Stone and Trey Parker, Comedy Central, Paramount, and Warner Home Videos. Enjoy! South Park. I don't even need to describe this show. It's one of the most successful animated shows ever made. And a big reason for that is because it's incredibly well-written, entertaining, and hilarious. Now, I said this before in my top 10 best Futurama episodes list, that I knew this one was going to be my hardest list to make. And boy, was I right. Even with my rules when doing top 10 lists, which is to not include 2 or 3 part episodes like Imagination Land, 200, and Coon and Friends, for example, it was still incredibly hard to narrow my choices down to 10 episodes. I mean, here's one thing I want to say about this. In each of my top 10 lists, I already knew what my number 1 episode was going to be going into it. With this list, my top 3 I was considering putting at number 1 at some point. I love these episodes that much. I mean, South Park is damn near impossible to make a top 10 list about, because there are way too many good episodes to choose from. And honestly, this is a list that can always change, because South Park has dozens of great episodes. So I already know I left a lot of your guys' favorites off this list. And regardless, that was inevitable, as, like I said, South Park is just too damn good of a show. Well, let's get this list started. Enjoy! Number 10. Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man. Scott Tenorman Must Die. Personally, I almost didn't even put this one on the list, because, well, one, many people consider this the best episode of South Park, and I kind of wanted to bring focus to some new episodes that I feel get overlooked. And 2, I never really thought it was anything too special. I mean, I thought for the most part it was decent and a nice bit of entertainment, but I never really thought of it as one of the best. However, one thing I cannot find myself overlooking, as it's basically the most talked about thing when discussing this episode, is that this is the episode that basically made Cartman the evil little bastard he is today. I mean, Cartman was always a funny character, but this made him a diabolical, sick, twisted little monkey. I mean, to basically sum up this episode, Cartman gets scammed out of his money by an older kid named Scott Tenorman. Scott ends up scamming Cartman out of even more money when he tries to get his money back.
And I'll give you back $2. Right. Now, give me the 12 cents, and I'll give you the rest of your change back. Huh? And then give me the 20, and I'll give you the pubes.
Sweet! God damn it!
And he even humiliates Cartman pretty badly.
I'm a little piggy, here's my snack. Oink, oink, oink.
So Cartman ends up getting Scott's parents killed, and then feeds them to Scott during a chili cook-off.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
And this causes Scott to break down and cry in front of Radiohead, his favorite band, and they find him uncool as a result.
Come on, guys, let's go. This kid is totally not cool.
Yeah, that's the most uncool kid I've ever...
Now, this sounds like typical Cartman, but actually, this was the birth of typical Cartman. Everything Cartman did in this episode basically made him what he is today. And not only that, it made South Park what it is today. This is the episode Matt and Trey credit for shaping South Park into the show it is now, and because of that, this episode needs to be on this list. Number 9.
So come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Cartman gets an anal probe. I'm sorry, but at least one episode from Season 1 had to make the list. And this one was always my favorite from Season 1. I mean, I'm kind of cheating because normally I don't put pilot episodes on my top 10 list, with the exception of one. But this episode seems to always be the one I find myself quoting and remembering the most from Season 1.
Yeah, whatever, you fat bitch.
What did you say?
I said I have a bad itch.
Oh, well, Carl, no. You hear me? You go to hell. You go to hell and you die.
Shut up, dildo.
And honestly, I'd probably go as far as to say I find this episode to be the most humorous episode from the first few seasons of South Park. Now this episode, as well as most, if not all episodes from Season 1, didn't really focus around a certain topic or current event. It was just about telling a funny story. And in this episode, Cartman gets abducted by aliens and gets an anal probe. But he basically goes into denial and keeps thinking it was just a dream, despite everyone telling him he's been abducted.
Say, did any of you children see the alien spaceship last night?
Yeah, that boy saw it. No, that was just a dream.
The same aliens who give Cartman his anal probe also end up abducting Kyle's baby brother Ike, and Kyle tries to use Cartman to get his baby brother back.
You visitors can hear me. Bring me back my little brother, goddammit! Oh, that hurts, you butt licker.
And while Cartman is so reluctant to accept what's happening to him, the stuff that happens to him is just so classic.
No, Mr. Garrison, I'm fine.
When your pilot is so timeless and memorable, you know you've created a fucking historical show. And that's exactly what Matt and Trey did. Let this episode be an example of that.
And I know that I am not under alien control.
I love to sing about the moon and the June and the springer.
Number 8.
So come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
You got F'd in the A. Now, I said in one of my earlier videos that my favorite character in South Park is Cartman. And I guess in terms of comedy, he still is. But there's a character I hold at a very, very close second that I find to be the most entertaining character of South Park. And that character is Butters, who, trust me, I'll be talking about a few times on this list. Now, Butters is basically a breakthrough character. He was not meant to be as big as he is now. And there are many episodes that show how funny and innocent he can be in a universe so cold and unforgiving.
Well, Butters, would you like to slap my titties around? Oh, well, no thanks, ma'am. I'll get in trouble again.
So how about we make an episode where Butters is responsible for a tragedy that resulted in the deaths of numerous people? When a gang of dancers serve Stan, he doesn't see it as a big deal, but his parents do. And Randy decides to teach Stan how to serve them back. And this results in a face-off. So Stan assembles a group of dancers, including a dancing duck, which is fucking awesome. But Butters doesn't want to be a part of it because his dancing resulted in the deaths of 8 people.
I let those people down. Don't you get it, man? 8 people died. Well, it was 9, actually. One of the women was pregnant. What? And 11 if you count the 2 family members that killed themselves afterwards.
But that's what South Park does best. It portrays how serious people can take certain things that really just don't matter that much, and it blows them so far out of proportion that you can't help but laugh at the obscurity of it. Now this episode is a parody of the You Got Served movies, and in a way, I think it pokes fun at how stupid taking something as hard as, oh, someone can dance better than me, is. I mean, hell, if dance was really that important in real life, Benji Schwimmer would be the fucking ruler of the earth.
Come on, y'all, let's say it one more time.
And also, this is probably one of the best scenes in South Park.
I've got something in my front pocket for you. Why don't you reach on in my pocket and see what it is?
I fucking love that song. I want that as a ringtone. It's just one of the many ingenious things this episode has in it. So yeah, I couldn't leave this one off the list. It's just one of the most entertaining episodes in my opinion, and god damn it, I love Butters.
All right, Butters, you did it.
Number 7.
So come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Cartmanland. One of the more overlooked ones in my opinion, and also an episode that Matt and Trey themselves credited, along with Scott Tenorman Must Die, as one of the episodes that shaped South Park into what it is today. Now what's really interesting about this episode is it shares a similar thing that Not All Dogs Go to Heaven had. And that thing is, Kyle basically loses his faith in God, despite the fact he's met Jesus before. So, yeah, sound familiar? But let me clarify something. That's not a flaw, it just can be a distraction. And as long as you make an episode that justifies doing that, then I never hold it against the episode. You already know Not All Dogs Go to Heaven failed miserably with that, but Cartmanland actually used it perfectly. In this episode, Cartman gets $1 million. That's literally how it starts.
Excuse me. Does this mean I have $1 million?
Yes, Eric, it's yours.
And Kyle, shortly after hearing about that and being so confused as to how God could give him $1 million, despite him being basically the son of the devil, ends up getting a hemorrhoid, a fucking old man's disease. And just the way he tells Stan is so depressing and hilarious at the same time.
This morning, I woke up and felt a sharp pain in my ass. I felt down there and found this big sore lump on my ass, Stan. I couldn't even sit down, so I had to tell my mother, which was humiliating. She took me to the doctor, which was more humiliating, and he told me, I have a hemorrhoid.
Keep this in mind. Cartman, a vile child, becomes a millionaire. And Kyle, who's been following religion his whole life, gets a painful old man's disease. And his hemorrhoid gets so bad that he becomes bedridden in the hospital and almost dies while Cartman buys an amusement park for just himself.
I'm so happy!
This is why Kyle loses his faith, and it makes total sense. You can see where this 9-year-old boy is coming from.
I'm always saying, I learned something today, and what does this so-called God give me in return? A hemorrhoid.
And even when his parents try to tell him why God does these things, the reasoning behind them are actually kind of flawed and only make Kyle lose his faith even more.
Why would God do such horrible things to a good person just to prove a point to Satan?
Oh, I don't know.
And I was right. There isn't a God.
Until Cartman, who ends up needing to allow hundreds of people into his park in order to keep it running, sells the park back to the original owners to get his $1 million back, and ends up losing it all due to numerous legal crimes his park committed.
There's also the lawsuit of the little boy who died in your park. The family's entitled to the rest of this.
What, Kenny? He dies all the time!
So he loses everything and a bit more as a result, and Kyle sees that Cartman is even more miserable than ever because he had his dream and lost it. And Kyle's faith becomes restored because now he sees why God rewarded Cartman to begin with.
It's not fair! It's not fair! I wanna die! You are up there.
This is what Not All Dogs Go to Heaven needed to be. It needed to be fair, and that's what this episode is. It's fair to religion, and it's easy to follow. It's a very well-written and clever episode, and I feel it does not get the respect it deserves. Number 6.
Down south, log in, meet some friends, man.
The Passion of the Jew. Even though I was a kid when The Passion of the Christ came out, I remember everyone absolutely loving it. Like, I always heard a lot of people talking about how heart-wrenching and how powerful it was. So this episode basically satirizes how everyone views the movie and how different their opinions can be about it. It makes Kyle feel guilty about what the Jews did to Jesus, even gives him some pretty serious nightmares about it. It makes Cartman become a big Mel Gibson fan, and he basically views Mel Gibson as a leader for the next Holocaust. And Stan and Kenny, well, they hate it. They think it's nothing but a snuff film and don't even consider it a movie.
I think the movie sucked and we want Mel Gibson to give us back our $18. Do you know how we can get in touch with him? You thought it sucked.
So they actually travel to Mel Gibson's house to get their money back. And... oh my god!
When you're a clown, nobody takes you seriously.
That is one of the funniest mockeries of a celebrity ever.
Jesus is Lord!
Now, I really like the way this episode chooses to talk about how crazy people can get over movies, and how spread out the reviews can be. But some people really do view these movies as works of art, which is fine. I mean, in a way, movies are art. There's always a different reaction to something in them, and some people look way too deep into them, and most of the time, they get a different interpretation than the director himself was intending.
Sir, apparently you don't understand what Mel Gibson was trying to do. He was trying to express, through cinema, the horror and filthiness of the common Jew.
I just followed the Bible. Christ died for you.
This is made obvious at the end when Mel Gibson basically shows how insane he is, and he makes everyone question if they've been looking too deep into the movie themselves.
Dude, I've been freaked out this whole time because of that guy's movie?
But there's also a nice religious undertone thrown in, where Mel Gibson tells Stan he can't hate the Passion because that means he hates Christianity, leading to Stan delivering one of South Park's strongest lines.
If you want to be Christian, that's cool, but you should follow what Jesus taught instead of how he got killed. Focusing on how he got killed is what people did in the Dark Ages, and it ends up with really bad results.
I mean, not only is it a well-done commentary on how people look too deeply into movies, it's a well-done commentary on how easily people can end up getting the wrong ideas from looking too deep into movies. And because of it portraying this in such a well-done way, I can't help but consider it one of South Park's best. Number 5.
Down South Park and meet some friends, man.
The biggest douche in the universe. Okay, so a fun fact about this episode. Apparently the entire crew of South Park agreed that John Edwards was the biggest douche in the universe, and that's why he's the focus of the episode. I mean, it was unanimous. That's fucking impressive. In this episode, Kenny's soul gets stuck in Cartman, and they go to John Edwards to see if he can talk Kenny into leaving Cartman's body. But it becomes incredibly obvious that Edwards is a phony.
And this wasn't a good death. It was a sad death. It was like a death that made people sad.
Well, obvious to everyone except Kyle, who believes Edwards.
Grandma's watching me. Always watching me.
Dude, you don't believe that guy talked to your grandma, do you?
Because of Kyle's paranoia, Stan ends up finding out how Edwards is making people think he can communicate with the dead, and tries to expose him by showing how the tricks are done. But instead, people actually believe Stan is able to communicate with the dead, which infuriates Edwards.
So, you think you can talk to dead people better than me, huh?
No, I don't think either one of us can.
Stan calls Edwards a douche and backs up his claim by saying this.
Because the big questions in life are tough. Why are we here? Where are we from? Where are we going? But if people believe in asshole, douchey liars like you, we're never going to find the real answer to those questions. You aren't just lying, you're slowing down the progress of all mankind, you douche.
Huh, that's actually hard to argue. What Edwards is doing is pretty douchey. Fuck you, John Edwards, you douche!
I'm not a douche.
This results in a face-off between Edwards and Stan delivers a heartfelt speech to how he understands why people don't want to believe that it's not possible to communicate with the dead, and Edwards ends up getting nominated for the biggest douche in the universe, which he wins.
Here he is, the biggest douche of the universe. In all the galaxies, there's no bigger douche than you.
I mean, John Edwards may have been the celebrity South Park did the best job tearing apart. And while this is happening, Jeff takes Cartman to his parents to get Kenny's soul out of Cartman. But Kenny's soul ends up going into a pot roast.
Oh, well, I guess the child's a pot roast now.
What are the odds of that? And another thing I really like about this episode are its shots at Rob Schneider.
Rob Schneider is a stapler. Rob Schneider is a carrot. Rob Schneider is Kenny. Rob Schneider is da derp da derp da diddly derpy derpy derp.
Love those. That's just another thing that makes this episode so enjoyable. Definitely one of South Park's best written and humorous episodes. And again, fuck you, John Edwards, you fucking douche.
Douche!
Number 4.
Come on down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Good times with weapons. Now, for those of you who don't know, I love anime. So seeing South Park do an anime-style episode is just so fucking funny and enjoyable to me. Also, I should state this now. Because I chose this episode, I'm not going to include Make Love Not Warcraft. Only because I feel those episodes are a little too similar. Like they both involve the boys' voices coming out of tough characters, focus around a style that's very dear to anyone that's a fan, and appeal to that kind of demographic. And because I never really played World of Warcraft and I'm a huge fan of anime, I had to go with this one. But trust me, if I got into Warcraft, I would have put that episode on the list instead. Now let's talk about this episode. In this episode, the boys buy real ninja weapons from a fair without their parents' knowledge, and end up imagining themselves as anime characters, giving themselves their own anime ninja names and anime superpowers.
Yeah, and my powerful nunchucks make me into Bunraku, a deadly but compassionate ninja who protects those in trouble.
Yes, and I am Bulrog, tough brute ninja who has dedicated his life to eradicating the world from hippies.
There's just something really enjoyable about those voices coming out of those characters.
That doesn't count, fat ass.
Yeah, that's it, Cartman. You don't get to have any powers.
And also in keeping with traditional anime fashion, there's also a catchy little theme song to go with it.
Hey, hey, let's go, Kinkasuru. Taisetsu na mono, protect my balls. Boku ga warui, so let's fighting. Let's fighting love. Let's fighting love.
Well, Butters ends up getting invested in their game and challenges them to a fight, resulting in Kenny throwing one of his ninja stars and... Oh my god! Oh, I feel so bad for Butters! So the boys, of course, end up trying to find a way to get Butters to the hospital without their parents finding out what they did. So they dress Butters up as a dog so he can go to the vet instead. But Butters ends up wandering away from them.
Oh, nice going, you assholes! You made us lose him!
Oh shit, you guys are in trouble. We're out of here.
Butters later turns up at a fair during an auction, but the boys need to get past their parents to reach him. So Cartman resorts to doing this. That's how you cap off an ending, with Cartman doing something so incredibly stupid and so incredibly funny. And as expected, the parents are more outraged with Cartman flashing his junk than they are with Butters getting hurt. And as a result, the boys don't get in trouble for buying their weapons.
Yeah, I agree. My fragile little 8-year-old mind didn't know how to deal with what I was seeing. Cartman should be punished.
Yeah, that's right. I agree.
Hey, fuck you, Cap!
I mean, that's a nice little mockery of where some people's morals are right there. This episode is just epic. That's the best way to describe it. The characters are awesome, the story is awesome, and it's a wonderful tribute to anime shows. Now keep this in mind. Every episode after this one, I considered for number 1 at some point. So let's get into those episodes. Number 3.
Come on down South Block and meet some friends, man.
You're Getting Old. Probably the newest episode that's on this list. This episode basically focuses around things changing as you get older. Or, let's call it what it is, puberty. In this episode, Stan turns 10 years old. And as a result, the things he always liked end up becoming terrible to him. He starts hating the music he liked, he starts hating the video games he liked, he starts hating the food he liked, and when he goes to see a doctor, the doctor diagnoses him as a cynical asshole.
With you, somehow the wires have gotten crossed and everything looks and sounds like shit to you. It's a condition called being a cynical asshole.
Wait, that's a disease? Siri, schedule me an appointment to see the doctor. Anyway, Stan's cynical nature ends up driving his friends away, as they can't stand to be around him. And yeah, you can't really blame them.
Dude, you've changed.
I haven't changed. The world has. Don't you see it?
The episode portrays Stan's cynical nature so perfectly. Like everything literally becomes shit to him. And even though he doesn't want it to be like that, it's kind of hard for him to not allow it to be. And this is a really nice metaphor to how kids can be when they start getting older. But not only is it discussing puberty, it also discusses midlife crises. As the secondary story focuses around Randy trying to avoid accepting that he's old, and trying to become a rock star because he thinks he can appeal to a younger audience.
I got a fever, but it's under control.
And again, even though you know it's stupid, you kind of feel for him, because he isn't happy with his current life, or how his life has turned out up to this point.
Because I'm unhappy, okay? I've been unhappy for a long time.
I mean, this episode really does capture how hard getting old is in general for anyone, and how hard a lot of people take it. And this is all summed up perfectly in this final scene. God, even the song itself sums up this episode perfectly. I'm probably stretching this a bit, but I think this episode is one of South Park's most powerful. I mean, the ending was so strong that people thought this was the series finale for a bit. And you know what? When they do make their series finale, I pray it can be as powerful as this episode, because South Park deserves to go out on a high note. Also, am I cheating for putting this on the list when there's technically a continuation? Nope, it's not technically a two-parter, therefore it qualifies. Plus, this episode is better than the second one by a landslide.
Well, a landslide bring it down.
Number 2. Kenny dies. In a way, this is one of their more serious episodes. But it still has that South Park feel to it where you can still tell they're mocking something. In this episode, Cartman finds a crashed truck full of stem cells and tries to market them off. But he ends up unable to sell them because of the endless amount of controversy over stem cells and stem cell research, resulting in research getting shut down. And while talking to a doctor, the doctor explains how stem cells work and where they come from. And honestly, the way it's explained, you can see why it's so controversial, yet so potentially helpful.
Because these cells are blanks, they will often program themselves based on what cells you put around them. You see this rat? Earlier this year, we surgically removed the middle of her spine. Then we injected her with some stem cells and they became the missing part of the spine.
Why are we not funding this?
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I never understood what stem cells were or how they worked until I saw this episode. That's right, South Park actually taught me something I still remember. Take that, 13 years of public school! Well anyway, while this is going on, Kenny ends up developing a terminal illness and is on the verge of death. And each character handles it very differently, which is honestly kind of new. Stan doesn't want to accept it, Cartman wants to find a cure, and Kyle is kind of the one trying to be brave for them and help them through it.
Hey, Cartman. I care a lot about him, too. Look, however hard you think it is for you, it's a lot harder for him. Just leave me alone.
I mean, you all know Kenny is always getting killed off. But this is the one time it's treated like an actual death. And in a way, I can see how that would be distracting. But they've poked fun at the fact that no one remembers him dying and no one really reacting when he dies, that you kind of just learn to roll with it after a while.
Oh my god, they killed Kenny. You bastards. Listen, we have to give a huge speech tomorrow about corporate takeovers.
And for those of you who don't know, originally, Matt and Trey planned to kill Kyle off in this episode. But they chose Kenny instead because they were actually starting to run out of original ways to kill him. And I can't help but wonder how much different it would have been if they did that instead. Anyway, Cartman tries to get stem cell research legalized, and he does it in a way that's an homage to the movie Brian song.
I love Kenny McCormick, and I want you to love him too.
I love Brian Piccolo. And I'd like all of you to love him too.
But in the end, Kenny ends up dying. And again, despite Kenny having died so many times, they still ended up making the death incredibly hard to handle.
Did he say anything before he went? He just said, "Where's Stan?"
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry! Anyway, this of course results in Stan feeling incredibly guilty until it turns out that Cartman, the whole time, was using the stem cells to make another restaurant. And Kyle beats the shit out of him for that, which is kinda satisfying.
Hey, I wasn't Kenny's worst friend. Cartman was.
I mean, yeah, it's one of the more depressing episodes, but it's got a good message, it's very well written, and it does still keep its sense of humor. And I really can't help but love and respect this episode for that. Now, this is normally the part where I do honorable mentions, but instead, I thought I'd show you the episodes I'd rank 11 through 25. Yeah, that's right, 25. Like I said, there were way too many good episodes to choose from, and there's so many more that I'm not including. South Park is just such a hard show to narrow down to 10 episodes, because they always find some way to top their previous episodes. Now, the episode I chose for number 1 is the one that just had the most meaning to me, on top of being really funny and well written. So without further ado, my number 1 favorite South Park episode. Number 1.
Down South Park and meet some friends, man.
Raisins. Yeah, like I said, it was a really tough call for me to decide which episode I find the best. But there's a big reason I chose Raisins over any of these others. And that reason might be a little biased, but I hope it at least makes sense to you guys. But first, let's talk about the episode itself. In this episode, Wendy breaks up with Stan because she wants a relationship with Token, and this makes Stan incredibly depressed. His friends decide to take him to Raisins, a clear-cut spoof of Hooters, to cheer him up. But this fails, and Stan starts hating life and becomes a goth. While Butters falls in love with one of the waitresses and believes the two of them are dating.
Hey, is Lexus there, please? This is her boyfriend.
Thanks for calling, Raisins. This is Lexus.
Hey, Lexus.
Hi, sweetie. Who's this?
It's me, Butters.
But when the girl tells Butters that they're not an item, he takes it as a breakup and starts crying outside in the rain. And when Stan sees this, he tells Butters to become a goth with him. And this results in Butters giving what I consider to be the best speech and the best life advice ever in South Park.
Well, yeah, and I'm sad. But at the same time, I'm really happy that something can make me feel that sad. It's like, it makes me feel alive, you know? It makes me feel human. The only way I can feel this sad now is if I felt something really good before. So I have to take the bad with the good. So I guess what I'm feeling is like a beautiful sadness.
And this results in Stan realizing that he can't let his pain run his life, and basically tells the goth kids to go fuck themselves.
He's right. I don't even know who I am anymore. I like liking life a lot more than hating it. Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Now here's where I get into why I put this at number 1. And let me tell you right now, if I made this list back in 2010, this would not be at number 1. It'd still be on the list. I still think it's a funny episode, and I still love the message. But shortly before I graduated high school, my first girlfriend and I broke up, and it destroyed me. But I remember a few weeks after that, this episode was on Comedy Central. I decided to watch it, and for some reason, Butters' speech kind of stuck with me. And in a way, it helped me feel a lot better about what had happened, and it's advice I still live by. It wasn't just any other episode of South Park for me. It was the episode that got me back on my feet. And I always had a soft spot for it since then. I love this episode. I love how it portrays heartbreak. I love how it portrays how differently people can handle it. And I especially love its message about why we actually need sadness and heartbreak to begin with. I mean, yeah, Inside Out talked about the same thing. But in this case, South Park not only did it first, they did it in a shorter amount of time and a lot more effectively. And for me, this is my personal favorite South Park episode.
Hey, Wendy! You're a bitch. Token, right here, buddy.
But like I said, these lists are grueling to make. South Park is just so well written, it's so effective, and I think it always has one episode that will affect someone in some way. It's not just another animated show. It's not like The Simpsons or Family Guy. It's groundbreaking. It's one of a kind. And it will always stick with you. Even when the show does end, it will never fully go away. And frankly, I think that says a lot. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.